Hey guys, it's ANicWin, also known as Amy, and happy Wednesday. I hope you're having a lovely day. This is the second component of my contribution to the Back to Basics building collab that Asimsa has created. Her information is linked below if you want to hop over to her channels and check her out. She's got YouTube, Twitch, Pinterest, Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, all the usual suspects. And if you've not already watched some of her builds or looked at some of her screenshots on Instagram, I highly encourage you to do so. She is an amazingly talented creator and so kind. This is, of course, a base game only build. I decided to actually do a true renovation, so I plopped down into Sandtrap Flat, and my goal was to try to leave the essence of the house alone. I didn't want to edit too many of the exterior walls. I also didn't want to do too much to the roof, so there are small changes, but hopefully you can still kind of tell what house this was in the beginning. Of course, you saw it before I started pushing and pulling at different components. So I did move that piece that I would describe as the bump out. I moved it in one, but I also move it in out one, I guess, towards the porch. That's difficult to explain, but you'll see it when it happens. So the square footage on the interior is the same. I just offset it a little bit so that I could change the roof just a smidge. And that was the second thing I did. I changed the roof. I didn't really like that it was all flush. I don't know, it was kind of bothering me. So I wanted that segment that is the bump out to be just a touch shorter. That way it didn't feel so weird when I put the windows where they are on the roofing piece. Maybe that's just my perception, but I needed that to be a little offset for me to feel totally comfortable with it. I also, as you can see, changed the porch. I don't know what was up with that carport feeling before, but it was not sparking any joy. No joy was sparked that day. So I reduced that significantly, and I do add a back patio. There's no back door to get to the patio, but there is a pathway leading from the front porch around to the backyard. So, I mean, not that they'll follow it, but if it was real life, that would be handy. You wouldn't have to walk in the grass. And I also add a pool, which I think when you load in this lot, you saw me destroy it. There's this weird two-toned pavement out in the back, and it looks like it was meant to be a pool, but fun fact, when Sims 4 was released in 2014, the base game only, it did not come with pools. Pools and toddlers were the two big things missing. If you're a longtime fan of The Sims, I'm sure you know that. If you didn't know that, it was a later update. I think it was almost 2 years, I think. Don't quote me on that, because time blindness is a real thing. But I think it was almost 2 years before we got either of those things. Now that I've said it, I'm going to have to look it up because I don't want to spread misinformation. But it was a while before we got those two components. Now the interior, some of the paint and some of the flooring is going to change. I really wanted to use the green carpet, and I couldn't make it work in the end, so that does change. And I believe I changed some color swatches. I thought initially I was going to go more green on the interior. I'm just loving green lately. And I ended up going a little bit more bluish, slate gray, brown. So we end up in that family, which makes sense because the exterior is that blue brick, which I ended up loving. I didn't expect that. I thought that was going to be funny. I don't know. I placed it just to see, like as an experiment, and I was like, wait, why does this work? And I kept it, and I enjoy it. I don't know if I enjoy it because the lighting in this world is orange, and blue and orange complement each other really, really well, or if I just like the brick because of the texture. I don't know. Either way, it was working for me, so I ran with it. I was going to leave the house, the exterior green, because it's green when you load it up, but I just don't like the trim. I didn't like the green trim that we get with the game, and I don't like white with green, if that makes sense. Like the bright white with that sort of light sagey green that the house was, it just didn't look right. It wasn't setting right with me, and I didn't want to go dark woods with this build just because we're in a desert world, and I felt like light was going to be the way to go. I felt like it would be more cooling. I don't know. I made that up in my head. It's probably wrong, but at the time it felt good. And you may also notice that in the back I used the grass flooring rather than the terrain paint. And that's because I'm imagining it to be turf, like the fake grass, and not the kind of grass that just grows. Like, you're not going to plant seeds and have a big luscious lawn, at least not in this particular neighborhood. So that is fake. It's turf. Don't fall on it. It does hurt. And then we start on the landscaping, and I'm not gonna lie to you, the landscaping for this one was a challenge. It really was. I am so used to not being in a desert, and I'm used to doing a little bit more of a luscious landscape, and I just couldn't. For a minute, you're seeing me struggle because I left it in here. For a minute, I just could not figure out what combination of plants I wanted. I knew I wanted there to be some rocks with that tall grass, and that plant is the reason why that house ends up being a little bit more expensive, because I couldn't find it in debug. I found a variation, but not like a good one. But I end up working it out in the end. These rocks are a little bit redder than the debug ones, but I wanted little pieces. I wanted to kind of make custom rock formations rather than the 3 base game orangey rock formations that we get. And I think I used a couple. I used that one there, and there's one to the right, and I might have used a third one. I can't remember. But I was okay with the variation in rock color in nature. In real life, you see variations, so I felt fine with it. And then I layered plants. I layer this, I think it's an agave plant, I could be wrong, with some wild grass, and then with the other wild grass. So I just like the fullness of it. I think it looks nice, and I think it looks about as lush for a desert as you can get. I'm still kind of struggling a little bit. I really wanted to use that little tiny plant near the mailbox. I knew that that was my plan, and I ended up making it work, but for a while there, I was just a touch nervous that it wasn't going to work. And then we move on to the porch. Since it's so big and I furnished it last, I wanted to make sure there was plenty of light, because I imagined that I was going to use some seating or something out there, because you're probably going to be utilizing the space that you have, particularly at night when it's cooler. And then on the back patio, there is going to be a grill area, and I decided to kind of mirror the roofing that we have in the front. So I place these little holes. These are more rectangular rather than square. I have no idea how to refer to this, by the way, if you couldn't tell, but I make them more rectangular rather than square, and I probably should have changed that on the front as well. But the only reason I did that is just because the spacing, you can't do anything like on a half tile with that type of thing, so we made it work. It's fine. And then since this is a 2-bedroom home, I'm imagining that there's a child. It could be a male or a female. I kind of made it a gender neutral vibe. So I decided to do a sandbox play area. So I fenced it in. I got rid of the turf and put in sand. This is the kind of sand that you can dig in, not the desert sand, although maybe it's the same. I don't know. The textures look different in the game. And I placed a little dollhouse, the monkey bars, and some toys, imagining that, you know, they're playing in a sandbox. And then I'm starting to do some landscaping back here. I decided to get rid of the third staircase. It felt like a little bit of an overkill. And then I kind of want to switch up the plants back here a little bit. Full disclosure, am imagining that since the turf was placed, that these plants are fake, that they're not real. I don't know if people would plant fake plants in their backyard, but I did it. I done did it. Can't take it back. But that was my vibe. I thought that they would be fake, just to kind of tie into what we had going on. They'd probably be a headache to clean, but it, you know, sacrifices. We all make them. And then I'm kind of decorating the pool here a little bit. I wanted to change up the wall tile and the floor tile just to make the water look a little bit more appealing, and I went with dark blue on both to make it nice. I place a few chairs around the pool here, and then I add some more turf here with a tree. I really like this little tiny debug palm tree. I like it. It looks like it's feisty, like it's got some spunk, and I don't know. It sparks joy for me. And we're just finishing up the landscaping. For something so simple, it took me so long to figure out how to do everything. I don't know, and since this was a renovation, I felt like leaving everything in, even the struggle. I don't know if that's helpful, but here we are. Now outside, because there's no back door to the kitchen, I decided to place a couple of countertops here just for surface area, and I think that they also keep some like grilling utensils and stuff inside the drawers is what I meant there. So they still have to carry the dishes in to clean them, but they can carry out plates and whatnot outside, and they don't have to run in and out as they're preparing their meal or whatever it is they might be doing. And of course, I give them a nice lovely big table for out here, and I put Frank the Friendly Ficus on top of that table. That is my favorite base game plant. He's just so good. It's just so good. Then we move on to the interior. I don't think I furnished the front porch on camera. There's just a little seating area with a rug and some plants. It's just a nice little area to kind of sit and relax of an evening. And like I said, this kitchen's going to be very small. I struggled with the counter and cabinet combination because I didn't want it to be too overwhelming. I also don't overclutter this because even though this is not a starter home price point, it is still very much in that starter home range. And I wanted to kind of leave some room for you guys to personalize if you download this, but I also didn't want to go overboard because I didn't want it to be a super expensive house considering it's only 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. But in this corner here, we're going to add a bowl of fruit. I struggle with this. I'm not gonna lie. I always struggle to decorate corner pieces when they're not attached to anything. So you're gonna watch me fumble for a minute. I end up getting rid of the knife block, and I think the second plant, if I recall correctly, but the fruit bowl stays, the blue plant stays, and that little utensil cup stays. And I really like how it turned out. I add a little piece of wall decoration there. I really am missing my cutting board right about now that came with the cool kitchen stuff. And I'm just kind of shifting around the cabinets. I decided they needed a little bit more storage in my head, just because I was thinking that those lower cabinets weren't going to be usable, especially with the plumbing from the sink. I know it's imaginary, but these are the things I think about. And then we kind of finish up the kitchen here. Now, full disclosure, I have not play tested this as I'm doing the voiceover. As a matter of fact, when I'm finished with the voiceover, I will be doing the play testing and adding a few more objects that I did not film. So if anything is different, you'll see it in the screenshots. But the reason I bring that up is the rug in the kitchen might catch on fire. I'm going to play test it. If it does, if it's in the way, that might be removed or changed in some form or fashion because nobody wants a fire hazard. Even with the fire alarm, it's a problem. As I blab through that, this is the dining space. I do have 4 seats. I know for a fact they're all usable because I did an alt place it. And I thought that was a good use of the space. I wasn't initially planning to put a full dining room. I was actually going to place like a bar, like an eat-at bar. And it just kind of worked out in my favor. Then we move on to the living room, and this is also very simply furnished, but I have to say, I really, really enjoy it. I like the couch more than I thought I would. I like that swatch a lot. I just didn't know if it would work with the style of the living room that I was going for, and it does. Well, at least I think it does. I think that's purely because of that swatch, and there's also like a coral or an orange swatch. They both look like they have texture to them, so they don't look like they're a hard plastic. Like I'd sit on that. The other versions, probably not. You saw me change out the carpet, and I did change out that table. That was one that we got with a birthday update, I think, or we got it with a free update. It just wasn't working. It was a little too modern for the rest of the home. And this is more of a traditional with touches of modern living room, if that makes any sense. I made all of that up because I'm not an interior designer, but it just wasn't fitting. It wasn't passing the vibe check. And then we move on to this little hallway. I literally just placed a rug. There's no wall space to decorate, and I was afraid a plant was going to cause a routing issue. And into the bathroom. So in the kitchen, I changed the tile to that same swatch, but in blue. And I do the same thing in here, although it takes me a minute. I decide to use, I think it's the raw plumbing line, I think, for everything but the mirror. I really like that one. It's my favorite. That probably also jacked up some of the price of this home. But I just think it looks really nice, and I thought it tied into kind of the exterior and the interior. And I did think that there was going to be a child living here, so I included the kids' trash can, that little rubber duck, and then we move on to the kids' bedroom. Now the walls are green, and the furniture is a split between yellow, orange, and blue. And I did that because I wanted it to be kind of like a bright, chaotic room. And I also wanted it to be gender neutral, and I feel like all 3 of those colors are gender neutral. They can be for either. That was the goal, at least. I didn't really have a specific family in mind when I was building this, just because I knew other people were most likely going to be playing here and they would have their own stories. So I didn't want mine to influence any decisions that I was making too heavily. I give this child a little bookshelf with a dinosaur on it, and I think it's so cute. I feel like whoever's in here is probably a little bit of a book nerd, which same, I'm right up there with you. I treasure my trips to bookstores, whether they're commercial or Target for that matter, or indie. I love a good book. I also include, of course, a toy chest, toy box. I forgot what that was called for half a second. And that's pretty much it for the room. There's still some space for you to walk around and get comfortable, and there's still room for customization when you move your own Sims in. And lastly, we're going to move on to the master bedroom. So this is outfitted for 2 different Sims. I kind of went more traditional with it. It did take me a minute to figure out how to lay out the furniture. In fact, you're going to see a transition here in just a moment, and it's going to look like nothing changed. Believe me, everything changed because I decorated the room and then completely scrapped it. Didn't want to make you sit through that. I end up really liking this room. I say that about everything. I'm always a little bit hesitant with things, I think, especially if I don't have a clear vision of what I want it to look like. I question things that I place, but at the same time, I'm just placing things instinctively, and then I look at it like now. For example, I decide that dresser is too much, I get rid of it, and I pick something else. And that's just kind of how I build and how I decorate, and it usually works out for me. Sometimes it doesn't, it just kind of depends on the the mood of the day, I suppose. But on that note, I'm going to leave you guys here to enjoy the rest of the build and hit the screenshots. As always, feel free to leave a like or a comment down below letting me know what you think. You can also subscribe if that's something that would spark joy for you. I will be posting the screenshots on Instagram if you want to hop over there and check those out. Check out Asimsa's channel as well. She is linked below. I will see you on Monday with my next video, and in the meantime, I hope you have a lovely day and a lovely rest of your week. Bye, guys.
Give me something, something good. I get wasted on the thought of you. Head is spinning, I can't move. Smoky eyes in a groove. No, I can't get you out of my mind. You're still with me all the time.